Lieutenant Amelia Chin pressed her palm against the transparent aluminum window of the observation deck, watching the twin suns of Alpha Centauri cast their amber glow across New Geneva's crystalline spires. 200 years had passed since humanity first set foot on this world, and the city below represented the pinnacle of interspecies cooperation. Human architecture twisted seamlessly with the organic curves of Siltheri construction, creating a metropolis that seemed to grow from the planet's very soul. "Beautiful morning for an invasion," muttered Sergeant Torres from behind her, his voice cutting through the peaceful scene like a plasma blade through silk. Amelia turned from the window, her reflection briefly overlapping with the alien landscape beyond. At 28, she carried herself with the confident bearing of someone who had earned every stripe on her uniform through blood, sweat, and countless hours in the training simulators. Her dark hair was pulled back in regulation style, but her eyes, those deep brown eyes that had seen too much for someone her age, held a determination that had made her one of the youngest lieutenants in the Colonial Defense Force. "Status report," she ordered, moving to the tactical display at the center of the command room. Torres manipulated the holographic interface with practiced efficiency. Three-dimensional representations of the Alpha Centauri system materialized before them, pulsing with real-time data feeds from the orbital defense platforms. Long-range sensors picked them up 6 hours ago. Massive swarm, moving in formation. ETA to planetary orbit, 14 hours. The display zoomed in on the approaching threat, and Amelia's stomach tightened. The enemy vessels, if they could be called vessels, resembled nothing so much as enormous beetles. Their chitinous hulls gleamed with an oily iridescence, and they moved through space with the coordinated precision of a hive mind. Each ship was roughly the size of a colonial frigate, but intelligence suggested they were more organism than machine. "How many?" Amelia asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Preliminary count puts them at over 3,000 individual units," Torres replied. "But that's just the vanguard. Deep space monitoring stations report additional swarms moving in from the outer system." A new voice joined the conversation, speaking in the melodic tones that characterized the Siltheri language before seamlessly transitioning to accented standard. "The singers in the deep places speak of great fear approaching." Amelia turned to acknowledge Viestera, her Siltheri liaison and one of her closest friends despite the vast differences in their biology. The alien stood nearly 7 feet tall, her humanoid frame elongated and graceful. Her large, silver-gray eyes, easily twice the size of human eyes, dominated a delicate face, while her skin held the faint translucency that made Siltheri anatomy visible beneath the surface. Amelia could see the gentle pulse of Viestera's dual hearts, the silvery threads of her neural network branching along her limbs like living circuitry. "The collective has reached consensus," Viestera continued, using the formal term for Siltheri democratic process. "We stand with humanity in this dark hour. Our worlds, our people, they are one now." The sentiment was both touching and necessary. The Siltheri had inhabited Alpha Centauri for millennia before humanity's arrival, developing a civilization based on harmony with their world's unique crystalline ecosystems. Initial contact had been tense, but 2 centuries of careful diplomacy had created something unprecedented in galactic history, true partnership between species. "I'm grateful for your people's support," Amelia said formally, then allowed warmth to enter her voice. "And for your friendship, Viestera." The Siltheri's large eyes seemed to shimmer, the equivalent of a human smile. "We face the dark together, as we have faced the light." A urgent chime from the tactical display interrupted their moment. Torres was already analyzing the new data, his weathered face growing grim. "Ma'am, we're getting reports from the outer colonies. Kepler station went dark 37 minutes ago. Last transmission mentioned creatures in the walls." Amelia felt a chill run down her spine. Kepler station was a mining operation in the asteroid belt, home to nearly 10,000 souls. "Any survivors?" "Unknown. The automated distress beacon is still transmitting, but no human responses." The strategic implications were clear. The beetle swarm wasn't just a conventional invasion force, they were something far worse. If they could infiltrate and eliminate an entire space station that quickly, New Geneva's 2 million inhabitants were in mortal danger. "Viestera, what do your people's archives say about these creatures? Have they been encountered before? The Siltheri moved to a secondary console, her long fingers dancing over controls designed for her unique physiology. Her transparent skin revealed the rapid flickering of neural activity as she accessed the vast stores of Siltheri racial memory. The ancient songs speak of devourers from the void, beings that consume not just flesh, but thought itself. Our ancestors encountered them once, many cycles ago. They come not to conquer, but to harvest. Harvest what? Neural energy. Life force. The songs are unclear, but they suggest these creatures feed on consciousness itself. Torres swore softly in Spanish, a habit he'd never quite shaken despite decades in space. So they're not just trying to kill us, they're trying to eat our souls. Before anyone could respond, the command center's blast doors hissed open, admitting Colonel Martinez, the commanding officer of New Geneva's defensive forces. The colonel was a legend in the Colonial Defense Force, a veteran of the Tau Ceti Rebellion and the hero of the Proxima standoff. Her presence alone seemed to steady the room's nervous energy. "Ladies and gentlemen," Colonel Martinez announced without preamble, "I'm here to brief you on Operation Crystal Spear." The tactical display shifted, showing detailed schematics of the beetle ships. At the center of the swarm was a massive vessel, easily 10 times the size of the others, that pulsed with an ominous bioluminescence. "Intelligence analysis suggests this is the Queen ship," the colonel continued. "Our xenobiologists believe it serves as the central nervous system for the entire swarm. If we can eliminate it, we should be able to disrupt their coordination and break their offensive capability." Amelia studied the display, her tactical mind already analyzing approach vectors and defensive capabilities. "What's our intel on the Queen ship's defenses?" "Sparse, unfortunately. But we've identified what appears to be a vulnerable point, a neural cluster near the ship's core. The problem is reaching it. The Queen ship will be surrounded by the entire swarm, and our preliminary scans suggest the interior is a maze of organic corridors designed to confuse and disorient intruders." Viestera stepped forward, her large eyes reflecting the holographic display. "My people have volunteered to guide the strike team. Our neural patterns are different from yours. We may be less susceptible to the creature's psychic influence." "Absolutely not," Amelia said immediately. "I won't ask your people to." "You are not asking," Viestera interrupted gently. "We are offering. This is our world too, Amelia. Our children sing in the crystal gardens, our elders dream in the deep places. We will not stand aside while darkness devours the light." Colonel Martinez nodded approvingly. "The mission parameters are as follows. A joint human Siltheri strike team will infiltrate the Queen ship and plant a quantum resonance bomb at the neural cluster. The bomb will disrupt the creature's neural functions and hopefully cascade the effect throughout the swarm." "Who's leading the strike team?" Torres asked. The colonel's eyes fixed on Amelia. "Lieutenant Chen, you've been selected to command the operation. Your service record and your unique relationship with the Siltheri make you the ideal choice." Amelia felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. 2 million lives depended on the success of this mission, human and Siltheri alike. "I accept the assignment, ma'am. What resources will I have?" "Your team will consist of 12 human Special Forces operatives and 6 Siltheri volunteers. You'll be equipped with the latest adaptive armor and weaponry designed specifically for close-quarters combat and alien environments. The insertion will be handled by the stealth corvette Shadow's Edge." The briefing continued for another hour, covering everything from insertion protocols to extraction procedures. As the details accumulated, Amelia began to appreciate the enormous complexity of the operation. They would have to penetrate the swarm undetected, board the Queen ship, navigate its interior defenses, locate the neural cluster, plant the bomb, and escape, all while being hunted by creatures that could apparently feed on human consciousness. As the meeting concluded and the various officers dispersed to their duties, Viestera approached Amelia. "May I speak with you privately?" They stepped out onto the observation deck's balcony, where the twin suns were beginning their descent toward the horizon. The city below bustled with activity as civilians were evacuated to underground shelters and military units took up defensive positions. "You're troubled by something," Amelia observed, reading the subtle patterns in her friend's luminescent skin. "The ancient songs are incomplete," Viesthera admitted. "But they speak of a great price paid in the last encounter with the Devourers. My ancestors survived, but at terrible cost." "What kind of cost?" "The songs do not say directly, but there are gaps, missing voices that once joined the chorus. I fear that stopping these creatures may require sacrifices we have not yet contemplated." Amelia placed a hand on her friend's shoulder, feeling the alien coolness of Siltheri's skin. "Then we'll face that choice when it comes. Together." The armory beneath New Geneva's military complex hummed with activity as Amelia's strike team prepared for their mission. Human and Siltheri technicians worked side by side, making final adjustments to equipment that represented the cutting edge of both civilizations' military technology. Amelia stood before her assembled team, studying the faces that would accompany her into the belly of the beast. The 12 human operatives were veterans all, handpicked from various special forces units across the colony. Sergeant Torres would serve as her second-in-command, his experience in urban warfare invaluable for the close-quarters fighting they expected. Corporal Singh brought expertise in demolitions and engineering, while Private First Class Washington was their specialist in alien biology and xenopsychology. The 6 Siltheri volunteers represented a more diverse group. Besides Viesthera, who would serve as their primary guide and translator, they included Sunthera, a warrior poet from the mountain clans whose translucent skin showed intricate tattoos of silver neural pathways, and 4 others from various castes and regions of Siltheri society. "Ladies and gentlemen," Amelia began, her voice carrying easily through the armory's vaulted space. "In 6 hours, we're going to attempt something that has never been done before, a joint human-Siltheri assault on an alien hive mind. The stakes couldn't be higher, the survival of our entire civilization depends on our success." She gestured to the tactical display mounted on the wall, which showed the latest intelligence on the approaching swarm. "The beetles will reach planetary orbit in 8 hours. Our window for insertion is narrow, we need to board the Queen ship before they begin their final assault on the planet." Private Washington raised her hand. "Ma'am, what's our contingency if the stealth approach fails?" "There isn't one," Amelia replied bluntly. "If we're detected during insertion, the entire swarm will focus on stopping us. The Shadow's Edge might escape, but our mission will be over before it begins." Sunthera spoke in the melodic Siltheri language, and Viesthera translated. "She asks about the nature of the neural cluster we're targeting. Her caste specializes in the harmonics of living systems." Amelia nodded to the xenobiology specialist. "Washington? Based on our analysis of beetle ship fragments recovered from Kepler Station, the neural cluster appears to be a massive brain analog composed of interconnected ganglia. Think of it as a biological supercomputer that coordinates the actions of thousands of individual organisms. If we can disrupt its function, the entire swarm should lose cohesion." Another Siltheri, whose name Amelia knew as Morthani, gestured with her elongated hands. The patterns in her transparent skin flickered rapidly as she spoke. "She expresses concern about psychic defenses," Viesthera translated. "The ancient songs speak of mental barriers that can trap consciousness within false realities. That's why we're going in together," Amelia said. "Human and Siltheri minds operate on different frequencies. What affects one species may not affect the other. We'll watch each other's backs." The next hour was spent in detailed mission planning. They studied deck plans extrapolated from scan data, memorized the location of the neural cluster, and rehearsed their insertion and extraction procedures. The quantum resonance bomb that would destroy the cluster was a marvel of human engineering, a device the size of a briefcase that could generate a neural disruption field powerful enough to scramble the Queen's brain from the inside out. As the team prepared their personal equipment, Amelia found herself standing before a mirror in the armory's fitting room, studying her reflection in the adaptive armor that would keep her alive in the hostile environment of the beetle ship. The suit was a masterpiece of human technology enhanced with Siltheri biotechnology, living fibers that could adjust their properties in real time, sensors that could detect biological and psychic threats, and a neural interface that would allow her to coordinate with both human and alien team members. "You look like a warrior from the old songs," Viesteros said, appearing in the mirror beside her. The Siltheri wore armor of her own, an elegant design that seemed to flow like liquid metal over her translucent skin. "I feel like someone pretending to be a warrior," Emilia admitted. "This morning I was just another lieutenant reviewing patrol schedules. Now I'm supposed to save the world." "The ancient songs speak of such moments," Viesteros said softly. "Times when ordinary beings must rise to meet extraordinary challenges. They say the strength was always there, crisis merely reveals it." A new voice interrupted their conversation. "Lieutenant Chen, you're needed in the command center." Emilia turned to see Captain Rodriguez, one of Colonel Martinez's staff officers. His expression was grim, which could only mean bad news. They made their way through the base's corridors, past bustling activity as the colony's defenses prepared for siege. The command center was a hive of activity, with dozens of officers coordinating the evacuation of civilians and the positioning of orbital defense platforms. Colonel Martinez looked up as they entered. "Lieutenant, we've received additional intelligence on the beetle ships." "It's not good news." The tactical display showed new details about the alien vessels, based on analysis of debris and sensor readings from the outer system. "The ships aren't just organic, they're inhabited by living creatures. Millions of them, based on thermal readings. Each ship appears to be a self-contained ecosystem." "What kind of creatures?" Emilia asked, though she suspected she didn't want to know the answer. "Best guess? Soldier variants of the main species. Think of them as white blood cells in a massive organism. They'll defend the ship against any intrusion, and they appear to be adapted for combat in zero-gravity environments." Viesteros studied the display with her large eyes. "The songs speak of children of hunger that serve the devourers. Perhaps these are the same." "There's more," the colonel continued. "Long-range scans suggest the Queen ship has some kind of defensive system that can project psychic interference. Ships that get too close report navigation errors, system failures, and crew disorientation. How does that affect our insertion plan? The Shadow's Edge will have to drop you off at maximum range and let you use EVA suits to approach the target. It adds risk, but it's the only way to avoid the psychic interference." Emilia nodded, already revising her tactical plans. A spacewalk approach meant they'd be vulnerable to detection and would have limited time to reach the ship before their suit power ran out. But it also meant they'd have a better chance of approaching undetected. "One more thing," Colonel Martinez said. "We've been in contact with the Siltheri Council. They've agreed to provide additional support for the mission." As if summoned by her words, the command center's doors opened to admit a figure that made everyone in the room stop what they were doing. The newcomer was unmistakably Siltheri, but unlike any that Emilia had seen before. Where most Siltheri were tall and elegant, this individual was massive, nearly 8 feet in height and proportionally broader than the usual willowy build. His skin held a different quality of translucency, showing not just the typical neural networks but what appeared to be additional organs and structures. "I am Kelthanin of the Deep Guard," the newcomer said in heavily accented standard. "I have come to join your mission." Viesteros' eyes widened, and she spoke rapidly in her native language. The conversation continued for several minutes, with both Siltheri displaying rapid flickering patterns in their skin that Emilia had learned to recognize as signs of intense emotion. "What's the Deep Guard?" Emilia asked when the conversation concluded. "They are, how would you say, our special forces," Viesteros explained. "Warriors trained in the deepest places of our world, where the crystal singers teach the old ways of war. Kelthanin's presence honors us greatly." The massive Siltheri nodded gravely. "The songs of the depths remember the last war with the Devourers. I carry knowledge that may prove essential to your mission's success." "What kind of knowledge?" Kelthanin's skin patterns shifted to a deep blue-silver that Emilia had never seen before. "The true nature of the enemy. These creatures do not merely consume consciousness, they corrupt it. Turn it to their service." Within the Queen ship, you will face not just alien defenders, but the twisted remains of those they have already harvested. The implications were chilling. If the beetles could convert their victims into servants, then every world they had attacked would have provided them with new troops intimately familiar with the technology and tactics of their former allies. How do we defend against that? Torres asked. Mental discipline. Unity of purpose. And this. Kelthanen produced a small crystalline device from his armor. A focus stone from the deep places. It will help maintain clarity of thought in the presence of psychic interference. We'll need more than one, Amelia pointed out. Each team member will receive one. The Crystal Singers worked through the night to prepare them. As the briefing continued, Amelia found herself impressed by the level of support both species were providing for the mission. It spoke to the genuine partnership that had developed between humanity and the Siltheri over the past 2 centuries. They truly were in this together. The final hour before departure was spent in quiet preparation. Amelia checked and rechecked her equipment, reviewed mission parameters one last time, and tried to quiet the nervous energy that threatened to overwhelm her focus. She had led combat missions before, but never one with stakes this high. As she made her way to the launch bay where the Shadow's Edge waited, she was joined by Colonel Martinez. Second thoughts, Lieutenant? A few hundred, Amelia admitted. But the mission is sound. We have good people, good equipment, and good intelligence. If it can be done, we'll do it. I know you will. But remember, if things go badly, your first priority is the survival of your team. We can't afford to lose you and the Siltheri volunteers. The alliance between our species is too important. Understood, ma'am. They reached the launch bay, where the strike team was making final preparations. The Shadow's Edge was a marvel of human engineering, a sleek vessel designed for stealth and speed rather than heavy combat. Its hull was covered in adaptive camouflage systems that could mimic the background radiation of space, and its engines were designed to run virtually silent. All aboard, called the ship's captain, Commander Hayes. We launch in 10 minutes. As Amelia boarded the ship with her team, she took one last look at New Geneva through the launch bay's transparent barriers. The city sparkled in the light of the twin suns, a testament to what could be achieved when different species worked together. In a few hours, she would either return as a hero or not return at all. The ship's engines hummed to life, and the Shadow's Edge lifted off into the amber sky of Alpha Centauri, carrying 18 souls toward a rendezvous with destiny. The Shadow's Edge cut through space like a silent knife, its adaptive hull shimmering with the reflected light of distant stars. In the ship's cramped crew compartment, 18 beings from 2 different worlds prepared for what might be the last mission any of them would ever undertake. Amelia floated in the zero-gravity environment, checking the seals on her EVA suit one final time. Around her, the strike team made similar preparations, the ritual of warriors who knew that attention to detail could mean the difference between life and death. The Siltheri team members moved with an eerie grace in the microgravity, their elongated limbs and enhanced spatial awareness making them natural space travelers. Approaching target zone, Commander Hayes announced over the comm system. Psychic interference is starting to affect our navigation systems. You'll need to deploy in the next 10 minutes. Through the ship's viewports, Amelia could see their destination, a sight that would haunt her dreams for the rest of her life, however long that might be. The beetle swarm stretched across space like a living constellation, thousands of chitinous ships moving in perfect formation toward Alpha Centauri. At the center of the swarm, the Queen ship pulsed with an organic luminescence that seemed to reach directly into the observer's mind. Jesus, muttered Corporal Singh. Look at the size of that thing. The Queen ship dwarfed everything around it, a massive organism that seemed part vessel, part creature, part nightmare. Its hull rippled with what looked like breathing movements, and Amelia could swear she saw things moving beneath its translucent surface. Bioluminescent patterns raced along its length like the neural impulses of a vast brain. Thermal readings show the interior temperature is approximately 37 degrees Celsius, Washington reported, studying her sensor display. That's close to human body temperature. The ship is definitely designed to support organic life. Viestera drifted closer to the viewport, her large eyes reflecting the alien ship's glow. The song spoke truly. It is beautiful, in a terrible way. Beautiful's not the word I'd use, Torres said grimly. Kelthanen activated his focus stone, and the small crystal began to emit a soft blue light. Immediately, Amelia felt a subtle shift in her perception, as if a fog she hadn't realized was there had suddenly lifted. The psychic interference grows stronger as we approach. Everyone should activate their focus stones now. The team complied, and the crew compartment was suddenly filled with a gentle blue radiance. The effect was immediate and noticeable. The oppressive weight that had been building in Amelia's mind vanished, replaced by crystal-clear awareness. Deployment zone reached, Commander Hayes announced. Bay doors opening in 30 seconds. Amelia activated her suit's comm system and switched to the tactical frequency. Final equipment check. Sound off. One by one, each team member confirmed their readiness. Weapons, sensors, life support, and most importantly, the quantum resonance bomb that would hopefully end this nightmare before it could begin. Remember the mission parameters, Amelia said as the bay doors began to cycle open, revealing the starfield beyond. We go in fast and quiet, plant the bomb, and get out. If anyone gets separated from the group, follow the extraction protocol and make your way to the secondary rendezvous point. And if the bomb doesn't work, ask Private First Class Washington. Then we improvise, Amelia replied. But it will work. It has to. The bay doors finished opening, and space yawned before them, an infinite expanse punctuated by the approaching bulk of the Queen ship. At this distance, Amelia could make out details of the creature's hull, vast organic sections that pulsed like breathing organs, apertures that might have been sensor clusters or weapon ports, and strange growths that defied easy classification. Deploy in 3, 2, 1, go! The strike team launched themselves from the shadow's edge in perfect formation, their EVA suits' microthrusters firing in carefully calculated bursts. Behind them, the stealth corvette immediately began moving away, disappearing into the darkness as its adaptive camouflage systems engaged. Amelia felt the familiar sensation of free fall as she and her team drifted through space toward their target. The Queen ship grew larger with every passing minute, revealing new horrors as they approached. What she had taken for breathing movements were actually vast sections of the hull opening and closing, apertures through which she could see the movement of countless smaller organisms. Picking up multiple heat signatures inside the ship, Washington reported over the comm. Looks like Synthera was right about the defensive organisms. How many? Amelia asked, though she suspected the answer would be unpleasant. Sensors are having trouble getting an accurate count. The organic nature of the ship is interfering with our scans. Best guess is thousands, maybe tens of thousands. Kelthanen's voice came over the comm, speaking in the formal cadences of the Deep Guard. The ancient songs speak of such creatures. They are called the Hungry Ones, beings that have been consumed by the Devourers and transformed into extensions of their will. They retain their intelligence, but not their humanity. Wonderful, Torres muttered. So we're not just fighting aliens, we're fighting zombies. In a sense, yes. But these zombies retain their combat skills and their knowledge of their former species' technology. The team continued their approach, using the microthrusters on their suits to adjust their trajectory toward what appeared to be a docking bay on the Queen ship's underside. The organic structure was massive, easily large enough to accommodate a frigate-sized vessel. As they drew closer, Amelia could see that the bay's interior was illuminated by the same bioluminescent glow that characterized the rest of the ship. Movement in the docking bay, Singh reported. Looks like we've got company waiting for us. Through her helmet's enhanced vision system, Amelia could make out shapes moving in the bay's depths. They were roughly humanoid, but wrong in ways that made her stomach clench. Some appeared to be human in origin, but their bodies had been altered with beetle-like enhancements, chitinous armor grafted onto flesh, extra limbs ending in razor-sharp claws, eyes that glowed with an alien intelligence. They know we're coming, she realized. This was never going to be a stealth mission. New plan? Torres asked. Same plan, faster execution. We go in hard, fight our way to the neural cluster, plant the bomb, and hope we can get out before it detonates. The docking bay grew larger as they approached, its organic walls pulsing with a rhythm that Amelia found deeply disturbing. The waiting defenders had arranged themselves in what might have been a welcoming committee, if the hosts were interested in ripping their guests apart. 10 seconds to contact, Amelia announced. Weapons hot. Remember, our objective is the neural cluster, not clearing every hostiles. We fight our way through, not around. Understood, came the chorus of replies. The strike team crossed the threshold of the docking bay, and immediately the organic structure around them came alive. The walls themselves seemed to reach out with tentacle-like appendages, while the waiting defenders surged forward with inhuman speed and coordination. Amelia's plasma rifle spoke first, sending coherent energy bolts into the massive attackers. The distinctive whine crack of human energy weapons was joined by the harmonious tones of Siltheri sonic weapons, filling the bay with deadly music. The first wave of defenders fell quickly, but Amelia could see more emerging from passages deeper in the ship. The bay's organic nature worked against them. What had appeared to be walls were actually concealed openings through which additional enemies could emerge. Move! Move! Move, she shouted, leading the team deeper into the ship. Don't let them surround us. The interior of the Queen ship was a nightmare of organic architecture. Corridors twisted and turned without apparent logic, their walls pulsing with alien life. Bioluminescent strips provided a sickly green illumination that cast everything in an underwater glow. The air itself seemed thick and oppressive, despite the EVA suit's life support systems. Which way? Torres asked as they reached a junction where 3 passages branched off in different directions. Viestera consulted a device that looked like a cross between a compass and a flower. The neural cluster should be deeper in the ship, toward what corresponds to the brain stem in conventional anatomy. That way, she pointed down the central passage, which sloped downward into the ship's depths. They moved quickly but carefully, their enhanced armor allowing them to bound from surface to surface in the low-gravity environment. Behind them, Amelia could hear the sounds of pursuit, the chittering voices of the beetle creatures and the heavier footfalls of the converted defenders. The passage opened into a vast chamber that took Amelia's breath away. The space was easily the size of a cathedral, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into shadows above. But it was the chamber's contents that truly captured her attention, hundreds of transparent pods arranged in neat rows, each containing a humanoid figure suspended in some kind of fluid. Conversion chambers, Kelthanen said grimly. These are the people taken from the worlds the beetles have attacked. Amelia looked closer at the nearest pod and immediately wished she hadn't. The figure inside had once been human, a young woman, perhaps in her 20s, but her body had been altered with beetle features. Additional limbs sprouted from her torso, her skin had taken on a chitinous quality, and her eyes glowed with the same alien intelligence they had seen in the defenders. Can they be saved? Washington asked, her voice tight with emotion. The songs do not speak of reversing the conversion process, Viestera replied sadly. Once consciousness is consumed, what remains is no longer truly alive. A new sound echoed through the chamber, a low, resonant humming that seemed to come from the ship itself. The pods began to glow more brightly, and several of them started to open. Time to go, Amelia said urgently. Before they wake up all their sleeping beauties. The team sprinted across the chamber, dodging between the pods as more and more of them began to cycle open. Behind them, Amelia could hear the splash of fluid as the first converted beings began to emerge. They reached the far side of the chamber just as the pursuit arrived, a mixed force of beetle creatures and newly awakened converts. The converts moved with jerky, unnatural motions, as if they were still learning to control their modified bodies. Blast door ahead, Singh reported. Looks like it's sealed. The organic door was a massive structure that pulsed with the same rhythm as the rest of the ship. Amelia couldn't see any obvious controls or mechanisms for opening it. Viestera, any ideas? The Siltheri approached the door and placed her hands against its surface. Her skin began to glow with a soft silver light, and she started humming in a frequency that made Amelia's teeth ache. Biometric lock, Viestera explained. but Siltheri biotechnology shares some commonalities with the beetle constructs. I may be able to convince it that we belong here. The humming continued for what felt like an eternity, while behind them the sounds of pursuit grew louder. Amelia kept her weapon trained on the chamber entrance, watching for the first sign of their enemies. "Got it," Viestera announced, and the massive door began to iris open. The team rushed through into another passage, this one sloping even more steeply downward. The air grew thicker as they descended, and Amelia began to detect an odd scent even through her suit's filters, something like ozone mixed with organic decay. "How much further?" she asked. Kelthanen consulted his own navigation device. "We are approaching the ship's neural center. Perhaps 500 meters more." They continued their descent, fighting running battles with small groups of defenders who seemed to appear from hidden passages in the organic walls. The deeper they went, the more alien the ship's architecture became. The walls took on qualities that were definitely not architectural, surfaces that pulsed like living tissue, passages that dilated and contracted like arteries, chambers that seemed to breathe. "Jesus," Torres whispered. "This isn't a ship. It's a living creature." "That's exactly what it is," Washington confirmed, studying her sensors. "We're not boarding a vessel, we're inside a massive organism. The Queen isn't just the commander of the swarm, she is the swarm." The revelation was both fascinating and terrifying. If the Queen ship was actually a living being, then killing it might be more complex than simply destroying a mechanical brain. They might be attempting to commit murder on a scale beyond human comprehension. The passage opened into what could only be the neural cluster, a vast spherical chamber dominated by a pulsing mass of organic tissue that stretched from floor to ceiling. The structure was beautiful in its alien way, covered with patterns of bioluminescence that raced across its surface like thoughts made visible. Thousands of neural pathways branched out from the central mass, disappearing into the ship's walls and presumably connecting to every part of the massive organism. "That's it," Amelia breathed. "That's the brain." But they weren't alone in the chamber. Arrayed around the neural cluster were dozens of figures, and these weren't converted humans or beetle drones. These were something entirely different. They stood 8 feet tall, with the same chitinous exoskeletons as the beetle ships, but their proportions were almost elegant. Their eyes glowed with an intelligence that was clearly alien but unmistakably sophisticated. "The controllers," Kelthanen said in a tone of deep respect. The ancient songs spoke of them. "These are the true devourers, the species that created the swarm." One of the controllers stepped forward, and when it spoke, its voice resonated directly in their minds rather than through the air. "Welcome, children of the spiral arms. We have been expecting you." The telepathic voice of the controller echoed in Amelia's mind with a quality that was both alien and oddly familiar. Around her, the strike team had frozen in place, weapons raised but uncertain how to proceed against enemies that could speak directly to their thoughts. "You have traveled far to reach us," the controller continued, its massive form remaining perfectly still while its eyes pulsed with that eerie intelligence. "Your species shows promise. We are pleased." "Pleased?" Amelia managed to say aloud, though she suspected the creature could hear her thoughts as easily as her words. "Your swarm is attacking our world. You've murdered thousands of innocent people." "Murder?" The concept seemed to amuse the controller. "You misunderstand our purpose. We do not destroy consciousness, we preserve it. We elevate it. The beings you call murdered continue to exist within us, freed from the limitations of individual mortality." "Bullshit," Torres snarled, his weapon trained on the nearest controller. "I've seen your handiwork. Those things in the pods aren't alive, they're puppets." "Your companion speaks from ignorance," another controller interjected, stepping forward with fluid grace. "Allow us to demonstrate." Before anyone could react, the massive neural cluster at the chamber's center pulsed brightly, and suddenly the air was filled with voices, thousands of them, speaking in dozens of languages. Human voices, Siltheri voices, and others that Amelia didn't recognize. But they weren't cries of anguish or pleas for help. They were singing. "My God," Washington whispered. "They're conscious. They're all still conscious. Indeed, the first controller confirmed. Every being we have absorbed continues to exist within the collective consciousness of the swarm. They have joined something greater than themselves, a unified intelligence spanning thousands of worlds and millions of species. Viestera raised her sonic weapon, but her large eyes showed uncertainty. The songs of my ancestors spoke of this. They called it the false paradise, existence without growth, consciousness without choice. Choice is an illusion, the controller replied. What you call free will is merely the random noise of unconnected minds. We offer harmony, purpose, eternal existence within a collective that will outlive stars themselves. At the cost of individuality, Amelia said. At the cost of what makes us human. Humanity is a transitional state. You will evolve beyond it, as have countless species before you. Sunthara, the Silthari warrior poet, began to speak in her native language. Her words carried a melody that seemed to counter the hypnotic rhythm of the neural cluster. Immediately, Amelia felt her mind clear. She hadn't realized how seductive the controller's mental influence had become. Mental defense song, Kelthanan explained, adding his own voice to Sunthara's. It will protect us from their influence, but not for long. The controller showed no sign of being disturbed by the Silthari song. If anything, they seemed pleased by the display. Fascinating. Your species has developed cognitive defenses against collective consciousness. This will make your integration more interesting. We're not here to be integrated, Amelia said, reaching for the quantum resonance bomb on her belt. We're here to stop you. The lead controller's eyes flared brighter. You carry a neural disruptor. Primitive, but potentially effective against an unshielded consciousness. However, you face a difficulty. The neural cluster you seek to destroy contains the conscious patterns of every being the swarm has absorbed. To destroy us is to commit genocide on a scale your species has never imagined. The implications hit Amelia like a physical blow. The quantum bomb wouldn't just destroy the beetles' coordination, it would annihilate the consciousnesses of millions of absorbed beings. The cure might be worse than the disease. They're lying, Torres said, but his voice lacked conviction. It's a trick to make us hesitate. Listen, commanded the controller, and the voices from the neural cluster grew louder. Amelia could make out individual words now, expressions of contentment, declarations of purpose, even laughter. Whatever else the absorbed beings had become, they didn't sound like prisoners. Amelia, Viestera said urgently, the mental defenses are weakening. We must act soon, or we will lose the ability to choose. She speaks wisely, the controller agreed. The decision must be made quickly. Join us willingly, and preserve your individuality within our collective. Resist, and be absorbed regardless. But know that destroying us will make you the greatest mass murderers in galactic history. Amelia looked around at her team, seeing her own uncertainty reflected in their faces. The mission parameters had been clear: destroy the neural cluster and break the swarm's coordination. But those parameters hadn't accounted for the moral complexity of genocide. What about our world? She asked. If we join you, what happens to Alpha Centauri? It becomes part of us, as do all worlds we visit. Your people will be preserved, elevated, made part of something greater than they could ever achieve alone. And if we refuse? The same outcome, but achieved through force rather than cooperation. The end result is identical, the only variable is the level of conflict required. Sunthara's defensive song was beginning to waver, and Amelia could feel the alien influence creeping back into her mind. The controllers weren't just speaking to her, they were gradually overwhelming her mental defenses through sheer persistence. But then Kelthanan stepped forward, and his voice carried a new note, not just the melodic quality of Silthari's speech, but something deeper and more primal. Ancient Ones, he said, using what Amelia recognized as High Silthari, the ceremonial language of the Deep Guard. I challenge your words with the memory of the First War. The controller's reaction was immediate and dramatic. Their bioluminescent patterns shifted to a deep red, and the neural cluster's pulsing rhythm changed to something more agitated. Impossible. The deep songs were silenced long ago. The songs survive, Kelthanen replied. And they speak the truth you would hide. Show them, Ancient Ones. Show them what you showed my ancestors at the Battle of the Crystal Gardens. The chamber's atmosphere suddenly changed. The bioluminescent patterns on the walls shifted to new configurations, and the air itself seemed to thicken. When the vision came, it struck all of them simultaneously, a psychic projection that bypassed their conscious defenses and painted images directly onto their minds. They saw worlds, countless worlds, but not as they were now. These were the worlds as they had been before the swarm's arrival. Amelia watched a planet covered in crystalline cities that sang with harmonious music, inhabited by beings of pure energy who danced between the stars. She saw oceans teeming with vast intelligences that communicated through bioluminescent displays spanning entire continents. She witnessed forests of trees that were themselves sentient, their consciousness flowing through root networks that connected entire continents. And then she saw what the swarm had made of these worlds. The singing cities fell silent, their music replaced by the monotonous drone of the collective. The energy beings were trapped in physical forms, their dance reduced to mechanical movement. The ocean intelligences became mere processing nodes in a vast network, their creative thoughts channeled into pure efficiency. The forest mines were harvested like crops, their organic networks repurposed to serve the swarm's needs. Preservation, Amelia breathed, understanding at last. You don't preserve consciousness, you harvest it. You take the creative spark that makes each species unique and turn it into computational power for your collective. Efficiency, the controller replied, but its mental voice seemed less certain than before. Order from chaos. Purpose from meaningless existence. At the cost of everything that makes life worth living, Washington said. You're not preserving these civilizations, you're stealing their souls. The vision continued, showing the aftermath of the swarm's passage. Worlds transformed into vast organic processing centers, their native life forms reduced to standardized components in a galactic scale machine. The diversity and creativity that had characterized each species was gone, replaced by homogeneous efficiency. But the vision also showed something else, the cost of resistance. Amelia watched as entire star systems chose to destroy themselves rather than be absorbed. She saw species committing collective suicide, parents killing their children to spare them from conversion, civilizations turning their own weapons on their homeworlds rather than let them fall to the swarm. The choice the ancient songs remember, Kelthanen said solemnly. Join the collective and lose everything that makes you who you are, or resist and watch everything you love burn. The choice remains the same, the lead controller said. Submit to efficiency, or face extinction. There is no third option. There's always a third option, Amelia replied, and suddenly she knew what it was. The quantum resonance bomb on her belt wasn't just a weapon, it was a key. A way to free the absorbed consciousnesses without destroying them. Washington, she said urgently, the bomb's resonance frequency, can it be modulated? The xenobiologist was already checking her equipment. Theoretically, yes. But I'd need to know what frequency to target. The same frequency as the Siltheri defensive songs, Amelia said. If we can disrupt the collective consciousness without destroying the individual patterns, we could free the absorbed beings, Viestera finished, understanding immediately. Return their individuality while breaking the swarm's control. Impossible, the controller declared, but Amelia could hear uncertainty in its mental voice. The integration process cannot be reversed. Can't it? Amelia asked. Or won't you let it be? Because if those consciousnesses are truly preserved as you claim, then they should be able to exist independently again. The controller's bioluminescent patterns were now shifting rapidly between colors, and the neural cluster's rhythm had become erratic. For the first time since entering the chamber, Amelia sensed that the ancient aliens were experiencing something like fear. The risk is too great, another controller interjected. Independent consciousness leads to chaos, conflict, inefficiency. It also leads to growth, creativity, and love, Amelia replied. Things your collective can never truly experience. She turned to her team. Recommendations? The frequency modulation is possible, Washington confirmed. but I'll need about 5 minutes to recalibrate the bomb's resonance matrix. The mental defenses won't hold that long, Sunthara warned, her defensive song showing signs of strain. Then we make our stand here, Torres said grimly. By Washington the time she needs. Kelthanen raised his sonic weapon and aimed it at the nearest controller. The deep songs speak of weapons that could wound even the ancient ones. Perhaps it is time to test their truth. The controllers seemed to reach some kind of collective decision. Their bioluminescent patterns synchronized, and the neural cluster's rhythm became a steady, hypnotic pulse. If you will not join us willingly, then you will be taken by force. But know that your resistance has been educational. The chamber erupted into chaos as the controllers launched their psychic assault. It wasn't like anything Amelia had experienced before, not just mental influence, but a direct attack on consciousness itself. She felt her sense of self beginning to blur, her memories and personality starting to merge with something vast and alien. But the Siltheri defensive songs held, barely. Sunthara and Kelthanen sang in harmony, their voices creating a bubble of mental clarity around the strike team. The controllers advanced physically as well, their massive forms moving with surprising speed and grace. The battle was joined on two fronts, physical and mental. Human plasma weapons met alien biotech in a deadly dance, while Siltheri sonic weapons created harmonies that could shatter chitin and disrupt neural patterns. All the while, Washington worked frantically to modify the quantum bomb, her hands steady despite the chaos around her. 2 minutes, she shouted over the sounds of combat. One of the controllers broke through their defensive line, its clawed hands reaching for Amelia. She rolled aside, firing her plasma rifle at point-blank range. The energy blast scored the creature's exoskeleton but failed to penetrate. The controller's psychic presence pressed against her mind like a weight, trying to force her into submission. But then Viestera was there, her sonic weapon singing a pure note that made the controller stagger. The ancient songs speak of harmony defeating discord, she said, pressing her attack. Perhaps they spoke truly. 1 minute. Washington called out. The neural cluster was pulsing frantically now, and Amelia could see additional figures emerging from hidden passages around the chamber. More controllers, drawn by the battle. If they didn't complete the mission soon, they would be overwhelmed. 30 seconds. Sunthara's defensive song faltered as a controller's psychic attack overwhelmed her mental barriers. Amelia watched in horror as the Siltheri warrior poet's eyes began to glow with alien light. Done. Washington shouted. Bomb is armed and ready. Do it. Amelia ordered. Washington triggered the device, and immediately the chamber filled with a resonance that Amelia could feel in her bones. But this wasn't the destructive harmonic they had originally planned, this was something more subtle, more musical. The frequency matched the Siltheri defensive songs, but amplified 1,000-fold. The effect on the neural cluster was immediate and dramatic. The massive organic structure began to pulse in new patterns, its bioluminescent display shifting to configurations that were somehow more natural, more chaotic. And from within its depths came a sound that made Amelia's heart soar, voices, millions of them, singing not in the monotonous drone of the collective, but in the wild, beautiful cacophony of individual consciousness. The controllers reeled as if physically struck. Their synchronized patterns broke apart, each one displaying different colors and rhythms. And for the first time, their mental voices carried something other than cold certainty. What have you done? The lead controller demanded, but its thoughts were no longer a unified projection, they were the confused, frightened words of an individual mind. We've given them back their choice, Amelia replied. Now let's see what they choose. The chamber filled with the sounds of awakening consciousness as millions of absorbed beings rediscovered their individuality. The neural cluster's patterns became more chaotic, more beautiful, as each consciousness began to assert its own nature. And then, one by one, they began to speak.